Hey there! Today we're going to be talking about hybrid hexagon twists, specifically the threefold alternating variation of hybrid hexagon twists, and how they can be used in all of these tessellations, and we're going to design one of our own together at the end. So first I want to take a look at what these hybrid hexagons are. So I'm going to grab my 16-fold triangle grid on a hexagon and zoom in so we can take a look. So first off, it's a hybrid hexagon, which means it's partially open and partially closed. If I was doing a closed hexagon twist, I would have all of my mountain folds coming straight out to the corners of my hexagonal sheet of paper. And if I was doing a purely open hexagon, I would have all of my pleats going one spacing further out, one spacing above, in the case of a right-handed open hexagon twist. So how can we hybridize between these two twists? Well, what I'm going to do is every other pleat I'm going to change from the open position to the closed position. So I'm going to take this pleat, switch it in to closed, and then I'm going to skip one, take the next pleat, switch it in to closed, skip one, take the next pleat, switch it in to closed. So now I've got this big triangle shape on top and these little pieces underneath. Next up, and I've got the mountains down over the valleys, so this is a secure arrangement of pleats. So next up, I'm going to grab my bone folder and run it along underneath here. So I'm emphasizing valley folds going perpendicular to the direction of the grid lines that I'm crossing. And do that on all three sides of my threefold hybrid hexagon twist. So that's the short version of how you make a hybrid hexagon twist. Now let's take a look at first the back side. So I've got my hybrid hexagon. I can see I was ever so slightly inaccurate in the center there with my folding, but for most applications, I don't even care about that, and it's not going to be a big deal. So I've got 6 pleats coming out of this twist, 3 of them coming in like a closed twist, and 3 of them coming in like an open twist. And likewise, I can see these same 6 pleats outside. So with that, let's take a look at some of these tessellations that I've folded with the hybrid hexagon twist and see if we can spot it from the other side. What I've got here is hybrid hexagon weave, and I believe all of these tessellations are included in the Crease pattern library with advanced twist techniques. You can see the link on how to get your hands on those crease patterns and more recordings on the theory of hybrid hexagons and other hybrid twists in the description below. And here we can recognize some familiar twists. We can see, okay, here's an open hexagon, here's a closed hexagon, these look like open triangles, these are closed triangles, and then there's this twist right here, which looks really similar to the closed triangle. But if you're paying attention, you'll see it's not just these 3 pleats that are coming out, it's also these 3 as well. That's our cue for the hybrid hexagon twist. We can see it more clearly in the back because it's the only twist shape that we have other than the closed hexagon to have its outline on grid on grid lines. So more specifically, it's the only twist that has the end shape of a triangle, that has the outline on grid lines. Then going on to strewn about. In this tessellation, we have some hexagon twists on the front. We've got a bunch of closed triangle twists front and back. And then this location here, kind of right in the middle of a triangle of 3 closed hexagons, is going to be our hybrid hexagon position. Notice we have that slight gap at the center, more than we have for the closed triangles. And we have additional pleats that we would not have if this were a closed triangle. So again, we can see on the back side, we've got these hybrid hexagons and the other half of the closed triangle twists. Next up, I've got hybrid closed islands. And this one is a little bit harder to see the symmetry. But one thing to keep in mind is when we have these triangle symmetry patterns where there's 3 positions of threefold rotational symmetry, those 3 positions will always form an equilateral triangle. And so if I can spot 2 of the positions, I can generally spot the third, and that third position of threefold rotational symmetry is my hybrid hexagon twist. One at a time. There we go. So here I've got a general open triangle as well. This would be a 3 open triangle, which I have documentation for inside of Advanced Twist Techniques as well. And yeah, it looks like a very weird pattern, but it is alternating hexagons and triangles. One other thing I should mention, there's another position with the hybrid hexagon twist in here. It's these 3 positions around this central island, and those are not in threefold rotationally symmetric positions. So those are these 3, and then this one's in the rotationally symmetric position. So we can get all wild and crazy with these hybrid hexagon twists. Next up, another example with alternating hexagons and triangles, and here our hybrid hexagon is in the center of the hazard sign discs. And this pattern is called hazard discs, and it has these 2 different triangles in it, which is pretty weird for a hexagon and triangles pattern. And we've got mostly open hexagons, but then also these hybrid hexagons in between. A couple more patterns here. We're switching over to a different tiling, the hexagons and triangles threefold tiling, that we're going to be designing a new pattern in together really soon. So with this tessellation, with this tiling, we have our hybrid hexagon with 3 triangles around it. And then what I was able to do with these twists is take that cluster and then flip it over onto the back side. So now I've got those same 3 triangles as these 3 and the hybrid hexagon on the opposite side. So this tessellation is actually the same on both sides, and it's called polarity. Then we have propeller weave. We've got our hybrid hexagons, closed triangles on one side, closed triangles on the other. So using the hybrid hexagon gives us the opportunity to do different things with different triangles because they're off different groups of pleats, off the closed pleats or off the open pleats. And so this is like really strange to think that this is a hexagon and triangles based pattern because it looks like all triangles. But if you try to fold it that way, you're going to run into trouble. So another use of the hybrid hexagon. Then we have close contacts. This is one of the clearer uses. And if you saw my video on Instagram yesterday, then you'll know that These are not triangle twists, they're the hybrid hexagon, and there's an additional pleat besides the one going to the closed triangle that passes underneath two triangles and goes straight to the next hybrid hexagon. So let's jump in to looking at some crease patterns, seeing if we can figure out some different options for using our hybrid hexagon. So straight into the crease patterns, I'm going to come over and down. This is the master toolbox that you'll get access to if you join me for Advanced Twist Techniques. And by the way, Advanced Twist Techniques isn't just an event, it's also recorded like a course and it repeats annually. So you're not missing out if you can't make it on the 15th. So this is the hybrid hexagon that I've been showing y'all. And this is the same hybrid hexagon but drawn on the back of the paper. Both of these are right-handed, and I can tell that because if I put my fingers out along the mountain and curl my fingers with my thumb up, right hand, then I hit the parallel valley. So that would be this mountain and curl to hit that valley. And let's see, here I did a closed triangle on the same side as the hybrid hexagon. Let's do something different. Let's do a closed triangle on the opposite side of the hybrid hexagon. So I'm going to go over and up to my triangle line. I'm going to grab a closed triangle on the back side and then come over to another file. Again, this is a template file that you get when you join Advanced Twist Techniques. And I can bring my twists in together. Now, what's different about the hybrid hexagon than the standard hexagon twists in this situation is I get to choose, is this square triangle going to connect on this set of pleats? Or is it going to connect on another set of pleats? Is it going to connect up here? And so what I'm seeing is it would be convenient, let's see, would be convenient for me to connect it on this set a little closer. So I'm going to modify my twist so it can connect closer. And bam, there it is. What I wanted to find here was these two spacings between the mountain folds. That's going to be a really solid sign for me that we're doing something that has reasonable spacing. And so I'm going to duplicate that, copy it all over the rest of the sides of my hybrid hexagon. And by the way, you can do this just by folding on the paper as well. I like to have an idea of where I want to center this piece before I start folding. And then if I have, if I'm using this in the hexagons and triangles threefold tiling, then I want to look at my pleats and I can see, okay, 2 spacings between the mountains here, 4 spacings between the mountains over here. My only option is to mirror. Those numbers, the 2 and the 4, are different, and so I need to mirror. I can't alternate this tessellation. So this is going to turn out as a very broad spacing, but that's fine. So since I've chosen this, I'm going to hop over to my paper and just start folding. With this particular tessellation, since I'm doing it on a square sheet of paper, I'm not going to care too much about how I center it. I'm just going to try and make it easiest for myself and then try and get a few repeats in so I can get a practice piece going. So first up, I'm going to start with the hybrid hexagon twist in the center. I'm going to find the center of my paper. So here's my center. And I'm going to set up 3 pleats around the center in the open spacing. So I found my center and I moved 1 spacing up to get my next mountain. Then I'm going to move 1 spacing out to get the mountain after. And the third will complete the triangle. Then from here, after each point of the triangle, I'm going to have 1 spacing before my next mountain, the closed type mountain, comes in and intersects. So I'll set up this one and then go around and set up the next one. We always want to be very careful to reference to points that are at the intersections of pleats. We want to be careful to use the true references and not try and guess which pleat it will be without unfolding the existing pleat. So I'm going to hop in here and grab my third pleat, and you'll notice all 3 of my new mountain folds are heading straight for the center. So all 3 of these. Once I have that in place, and yes, this is an advanced technique, that's why it's in the advanced techniques playlist, and what I'm asking you to come to is called advanced twist techniques. Then I rotate that down, and it goes most of the way down all on its own. And then I'm going to grab my bone folder, smooth things out underneath. So you can see where you might think from the crease pattern that this needs pre-creasing, we can actually do it all in one go. And then I'm going to smooth out the top side until everything is flat and get my hybrid hexagon twist. So next up, I had decided that the mountain folds that were coming into so we can see here, if I unfold this, I had decided that the mountain folds coming along the edge of the central triangle are the ones where I'm going to have my closed triangle twist. And this is an arbitrary choice. You could just as well choose the other set of pleats. So I'm going to grab this pleat and flip over, then set up my new twist so that it'll make a tube pleat. So I've got a tube coming down here with the next pleat over, and squash, and then I'll repeat that process all the way around. So I'm working on these open type pleats, making a tube, finding the closed hexagon, or sorry, closed triangle, and squashing, then rotating once more for the third triangle. Okay, so now that we've got these twists, it's time to see where the mirror symmetry lines are going to be. And the mirror symmetry lines can't run through any twist. They have to be at least this far away from that central twist. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my mirror symmetry lines right at the boundary of each of my closed triangle twists. So you can see I'm going to end up with quite a bit of extra space in this tessellation. But if that's what you're going for, then that's great. And so it's worth doing some experiments to see how much space would be left if you used, say, a closed twist on the same side as the hybrid twist, like I did over here. If you used that closed twist on the same side on a different set of pleats. And there's lots and lots of variations on this. You could use an open twist, you can use the open twist on the other set of pleats, you can do each of these on the opposite side from the hexagon as well. And so once I've got my mirror symmetry lines, this is determining what happens everywhere else in the tessellation. So with these 3 twists in place, I can determine everything else that happens. I'm going to start with this pleat that crosses the mirror symmetry line and has a twist closest in. And our goal here is to demonstrate how to find a hybrid hexagon when you have 2 pleats coming in, but you're not sure exactly where the center is going to be. So one method for that would be to flip over, have my pleat overlap, and I can figure out which pleat is which by looking at the mirror symmetric hybrid hexagon. Or I can say, okay, this closed square is 1, 2, 3 spacings out from the mirror line. I'm going to go another 3 spacings. Then the next spacing will be my next closed triangle. And I can set that closed triangle in place and just fold it over so that my pleat going into the hybrid hexagon is in the correct orientation. And I just have this free pleat folded over to lay flat. So with that in place, I'm going to flip over, open up my pleat overlap, and I can start to see that, okay, with this triangle in place, I'm going to have 2 spacings between where this mountain comes in and where that mountain comes in. And this is making me think that these 2 are my open pleats. And I had the spacing kind of set up like this. I'm going to shift this in, so I'm outlining my 3 by 3 grid square. I know I'm going to have another mountain spaced 2 back along that triangle. And here we're right by the edge, but I'm going to need another mountain right here hitting the first intersection of this edge. And with that, we can go in and settle all of our folds into place with the bone folder for highest precision, and squash that new twist in place. Pretty close to the edge, but we can make do. Then I'm going to flip over and squash the triangle twist that I just had, and recognize that this is another place where I can set up another mirror symmetry line. And then I can rotate around to another direction, complete the same steps on this side. So I'm setting up the closed triangle twist mirror symmetric from the previous one. Then I'm going to be counting out to the 4th grid spacing past the mirror symmetry line for my new triangle twist. I'm going to let these two, so this one I have no choice, this one I do have a choice, and I'm going to match it to the rotation direction of the obligate pleat. And then the 3rd I'm going to let lie flat so I can flip over, bring up the rest of my pleats. And so here I'm trying to recognize where that big triangle is. And I've got a nice clear edge here. So my next closed pleat is going to come in here, my next open pleat over here, my next closed pleat there. And with that, I can get everything squared away. And I'm going to reach in with my bone folder and get all of these little bits squashed nice and tidy before I run my bone folder over the top of the whole thing. So from here, I'm going to flip over, open up the triangle that I had left hanging. And if I had much bigger paper, I would also be doing some work up here in the corner where I have crossed a mirror symmetry line, and this is going to cause a closed triangle twist. And then I don't have enough paper to get to the next hybrid twist, which would be up here. And I don't have enough paper to get to the next triangle twist, which would be out here. There would actually be a pair of them out here. So I'm going to continue around to the 3rd side of my central cluster and bring that same sequence of twists into being. So I've got the closed triangle. Then for ease of figuring out my hybrid hexagon on the opposite side, I'm going to set up my next closed triangle and let it lay over before flipping to the opposite side, opening my pleat overlap without destroying the new closed triangle. And let's see what we can find here. Just like before, we're going to have our 2 outer pleats of the 3 that we have running together being our open pleats, and they'll outline the big triangle through here. So I'm setting up each of my pleats in turn, and then running my bone folder underneath to get those pockets of paper flattened before I finally squash from the top. Last but not least, I'm going to flip over and squash my closed triangle twist and check to see if there's any other places I can put closed triangles. Turns out I'm going to have one right here. And this is going to be a partial twist because it's right on the edge. And let's see. I do believe that is all of them, because my next mirror symmetry line would come out here, and I don't have enough paper to do the next twists on any of these lines. There is actually one bit right here in the corner. That's far enough across this line. Again, we're going to go 4 spacings over to set up that closed triangle twist. But this is kind of arbitrary because it's right there in the corner and frankly harder to squash since it's right there in the corner. And if you're like me, you don't even have that last grid line to finish the twist, like so. So that's as much of this pattern as we can get on our 24-fold triangle grid on a square. Let's take a brief look at how I would set up this pattern if I was doing it in a larger format. So the first thing is I wouldn't put the hybrid square in the center. I would actually center the intersection of mirror symmetry lines, which is 3-fold rotationally symmetric and sets you up to have nice tiling breaks as you go further out. So this is a topic that I've discussed in my project planning masterclass as well, but I always go for the high symmetry points for the center. And so we can see in this tessellation and also in this one that in the center of the tessellation we have a loop of 6 triangle twists, which then feed into the hybrid hexagon twists. Likewise, loop of 6 triangles feeds into the hybrid hexagon. So that would be my recommendation for this new tessellation as well. And I hope some of y'all try that out and see how it goes. So that's all for today's live stream on hybrid hexagon twists. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the comments section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, happy folding, y'all, and